The outright lead in the SEC West is on the line as Alabama heads to College Station this weekend. John Talty and Carter Karels here to break down the game. Alabama looking to keep its playoff hopes alive. The Tide have won 35 of their last 36 road games against unranked opponents dating back to 2008. Now that one road loss to an unranked opponent, that came in 2021 at Texas A&M. So let's start with the obvious here, guys. It's the Saban versus Jimbo showdown. Nick Saban 5-1 against Jimbo, but that one loss, pretty notable, as Saban had been a perfect 24-0 against his former assistants until that upset in 2021. So, John, what does this rivalry between the coaches add to the game this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history between these two guys, and I think there was a lot of buzz heading into last year's game because of the back and forth between those two guys over the summer. Nick Saban famously saying that Texas A&M bought all of its recruits, and then Jimbo Fisher's very fiery response the next day that, pretty much felt like it blew up the relationship between these two. But since then, I think things have quieted down. I think that the intensity between them has been ratcheted down. I think they've both said a lot of the same kind of right things about each other, talking about respect and things like that. But this is a game that I think matters a lot to both of them from an individual standpoint and also from a program standpoint. They've known each other for a long time. They work together at LSU. They're both kind of in a crucial point in the season right now where a win here could lead to a lot of good things and a loss could lead to a lot of questions that neither one of them probably wants to answer. So I think there's just a lot at stake, even beyond just the kind of complicated relationship between these two that we saw really kind of spill out into public a summer ago.
Yeah, we asked Jimbo Fisher in his press conference Monday, like, hey, how do you treat this game? What going against Alabama, is it a game you circle? And, he said the right things, right? Hey, faceless, nameless opponent, kind of what you'd expect any coach to say in a week like this. But it's hard to imagine it's not, a game you circle. I mean, first of all, it's Alabama. It's the top dog in the conference pretty much every year. It's Nick Saban, obviously the history between these guys. And with what Jimbo said in his press conference last May, that fiery press conference, hard not to imagine that those feelings don't linger, right? So, and then you just look at the matchup, right? That these are two of the only undefeated teams left in the SEC West. There's a lot on the line. You win this game, you're in sole possession of first, and you're really in the driver's seat going into the second half of the season. So, a lot on the line for this game, and I think it will mean more for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies.
Now, Bama might be in for a long day on offense as the Aggies lead the FBS in sack rate, while Alabama's O-line has allowed the second worst sack rate in the nation, and A&M only getting better. 14 sacks in the last two games is more than any other team. So, John, how does Bama slow down the Aggies' pass rush?
Well, I love that stat, Grace, because I had that one locked and ready to go for this too. But I mean, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, I think it's going to be the hardest challenge they've had from that standpoint all season. I think we've kind of known that this was kind of coming up in terms of a real big test. We've seen this offensive line, I think, start to improve over the course of the season. I think they really struggled early on, did not look great against Texas. Did not look good against South Florida. Had a lot of problems in that South Florida game when they started Tyler Buckner and then switched in Ty Simpson. So it's going to take a collective effort. I think you're going to have to chip guys off. I think you're going to have to use your tight ends. I think you're going to have to try to do different things because it's going to be very hard to win some of these one-on-one matchups. Just knowing the pure kind of pass rush firepower that Texas A&M has, and they've recruited very well at that spot. They've gotten multiple 5-stars, and I think that talent is really starting to show itself on the field. And so it's a real big question for Alabama for that offensive line. And Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, is going to have to be creative and maybe trying to design some things to get Jalen some design runs to try to keep them at bay a little bit.
On the other side of the ball, Max Johnson has been filling in for Connor Wegman. Really cool story about how he helped his brother Jake to his first career touchdown pass, and kind of an example of how important it is to keep your backup quarterback on the roster in this era of the transfer portal. But Carter, how would you assess Max Johnson's play so far?
Yeah, going into this season, there really was a thought that, hey, Max Johnson might be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the country, and he's only shown why that was the narrative going into the season. I mean, he came into the second half of the Auburn game, threw 2 touchdowns, threw an amazing ball. You see it right here to Evan Stewart between 2 defenders. I mean, look at that ball location there. That's impressive stuff. Then he goes against Arkansas and puts up a stellar first half. Throws another touchdown to Evan Stewart. Throws another one to Ernest Crownover. It's that second half that worries you against Arkansas. He opens it with a pick 6. He loses a fumble. There was another fumble, kind of a botched snap from Bryce Foster. So they want to clean up some things. I think they look at this last game and they say, man, A&M had 3 turnovers. Arkansas didn't have any penalties. A&M threw a pick 6, and it was still a pretty dominant performance. So imagine what it could look like if they kind of put it together with Max Johnson in this offense for a full 4 quarters. And so, you've seen what you've wanted to see out of him so far, but look, Alabama is a way different challenge than Arkansas and Auburn, so it'll be a really nice test for him.
All right, now we need an X factor or a player to watch in this game. So, John, who are you looking at?
Yeah, my player to watch is going to be Caden Proctor. We talked already a good bit about the offensive line, but I think Proctor is really maybe the key guy to keep an eye on here. One of the top offensive line recruits, #1 in the country coming in, true freshman guy who was in a fall camp battle with Elijah Pritchard, ends up winning the job. That battle has still kind of gone on a little bit throughout the season just because of some of the struggles that he's had. The ceiling is extremely high for Caden Proctor, but the floor is maybe a bit lower than other guys on that offensive line. I think we saw him in particular really struggle against South Florida and really have problems with some of that speed rush. I think we've seen improvements, especially the last couple of weeks. I think he played very well against Mississippi State. So it seems like he might be starting to figure it out. The game might be slowing down a little bit for him, but A&M is a massive test. And knowing, what A&M likes to do, knowing the defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin, it feels like an opportunity that they're going to try to capitalize on. And if he can't hold up, that could be a real big problem for Alabama. So I think they'll try to do some things to help him. I think they like that they have Tyler Booker next to him, the guy who's really the leader of that offensive line to help out with Caden. But it's going to be Caden Proctor's kind of like welcome to the SEC kind of moment. So we'll see if he can handle that, or we might be talking about how he got abused for 3 sacks and that became a turning point in this game.
Yeah, and for me, when I'm looking at the X factor, Denia Smith, wide receiver for Texas A&M, been there a while, 5th-year senior, can kind of do it all for you. He can catch passes out of the slot. He can line up as a running back. He's a prolific punt returner. But for him, this game, we talk about nameless, faceless opponent. He is not afraid to talk about how this game is personal for him. He mentioned it in his interview session with us Monday. His brother, Maurice Smith Jr., he initially played for Alabama. He tried to transfer. I know John probably knows this story a little bit better than me, but Alabama kind of got in this public dispute with him and initially didn't want him to transfer to Georgia without sitting out for a year. They ended up caving and letting him make that transfer without penalty. But it ended up being this whole public dispute that I know Denia Smith to this day, it's something that still is on his mind. And so the game is a little bit more personal for him. But he's also played extremely well against Alabama. Remember that 2021 game? He had a couple touchdowns, 80-plus receiving yards. And in this season, he's really started to come on lately. He had the 82-yard punt return touchdown against Arkansas. He had another long punt return, and he had about 4 catches, 71 receiving yards. So he started a little bit slow to start this season, but he's really started to flash in these last few games. And I think he'll be motivated to have another big one against the Crimson Tide.
Love when there's that little extra bit of motivation. John and Carter, thanks for joining us. And for more game coverage, be sure to check out Bama 24/7 and Gig'em 24/7. They are keeping you up to date on Alabama and Texas A&M football and recruiting news all season long.